Welcome back to the Weekend Journal on News Talk 580 WTCM. This is the show that pops up every Saturday at 10 a.m. and we talk about Michigan politics and Michigan happenings. Not that stuff out of Washington, the state capital. And we are here today, the final Saturday of summer, not by the calendar, but by just everything. Labor Day is here, so the summer season's wrapping up. So I thought, well, let's talk tourism and see how things are going. So the guy to do that with is Trevor Tkach. He is the president and CEO of Traverse City Tourism, TC Tourism. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great.
You've been in this game, and you're a native Traverse Cityan.
Yep.
And you were in charge of the Cherry Festival for umpteen years.
Uh-huh.
And then they lured you over to TC Tourism. So how long have you been involved in tourism?
Wow. Well, if you include my time at the Cherry Festival,
Well,
we
yes,
moved
you have
home.
to.
Yeah, we moved back to Traverse City when we started our little family, when my daughter was born, and she's now 19. So we've been back in Traverse for easy for me to remember when it's linked to a birthday. And I was with Cherry Festival for 10 years. And I would say that's tourism.
Of course it is.
A big draw. And so after those 10 years with Cherry Festival, I moved over to Traverse City Tourism. So I've been there for 9 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. So Trevor, I'm not out talking to everybody every weekend, but I've heard a little bit about this summer maybe being a little soft on the tourism front. What, from your position, what do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting bag here. And you kind of got to unpack and look at everything.
Sure.
Because I think there are winners and losers, which is true. It's always true. The consumer's a fickle group of people that, who knows what's driving everybody's individual decision.
Yeah.
But I have seen and heard, some stories of maybe it's soft, but I've also witnessed that other elements of tourism are up, watching like hotel reservations and foot traffic in certain areas. Mm-hmm. It does appear as though we're probably having as good of a year in some respects as any other summer that we've had. So, we haven't done the final tally as we still got a lot to look at, but it definitely the year in general started off a little sluggish. The weather hadn't cooperated in the early parts of summer or late spring. So, but what we're seeing at the end of summer, I would say, is a very nice bump. And that's what a lot of business owners are depending on, is that revenue that you can capture between Memorial Day and Labor Day to kind of help you get through the rest of the year. And so I'm optimistic that even if people felt like it was starting off slower for their business, that it's finishing strong. In like a lamb, out like a lion, perhaps, because based on what I'm seeing, it feels like all in all, this is going to be a really good summer.
Well, the weather, I think, and you watch this probably closer than I'm just kind of living it day to day, but it's been a nice summer, really.
Yeah.
A little rainy here or there, but overall, temperature-wise, good and hot. People swimming, having fun.
Very comfortable. I don't think we haven't had a 100-degree day. We've barely had, a couple of 90-degree days, I think. So it's been temperate, which is nice. We have had some weird rain anomalies that hit close to the weekend or kind of, muffled maybe some of the excitement. And that's challenging in this market right now because a lot of people are making their travel decisions very last minute. There used to be a time not so long ago when people were probably planning a week or 4 or 5 day excursions to Traverse City, and they probably were planning well ahead. And I'm not saying that people aren't still doing that, but it appears, based on some of the analytics we have access to, the people are making decisions last minute, and they are taking shorter duration trips everywhere across the country.
Sure.
So, it's hard. So you're kind of comparing apples to oranges. Whereas if we always were depending on, people booking 2 or 3 months out and spending longer time here, they might still come into market and spend the same amount. This is so weird, right? They might come into market and spend the same amount of money for 2 or 3 days that they would have spent for 5 days. But they're making the decision later. And, if you think about the economics of it, Jackie, you get this. The weekend in Traverse City, man, everybody wants to be here, right? So if people are choosing, well, I'm not going to take the time off, because midweek you're going to get a better rate on a hotel room. You're probably going to get access to things that you otherwise couldn't because things get busier on the weekend. But these folks choosing to do a shorter duration now are choosing then also to come on the most expensive days. And a lot of times when you book extended stay, multiple days, potentially the rate per day goes down. Mm-hmm. Well, now if you just choose to come on a Friday and a Saturday, well, boy, that's the most expensive time you could choose to come. So from a revenue standpoint, for a lot of the business owners here in town, I think they might end up in the same spot financially, but they're experiencing a much different customer behavior this year, for sure.
So what about, I hate to always go back to this, but I think it's still in the rearview mirror, COVID. Mm-hmm. That was, I don't need to relitigate that whole situation, but have we recovered? I remember post-COVID, like a year, some of the weekend rental type folks were saying, man, people have been so pent up, they're not coming for those short stays. They're traveling abroad or whatever it has. Have we seen people kind of return back to our normal vacation patterns?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and I can come at it from two different angles, leisure and group business. So from a leisure standpoint, I think Northern Michigan was the benefactor of COVID, if there was a benefactor, because we had wide open space. Mm-hmm. People could leave the metropolitan areas and feel safe come into the Traverse City area. And so we did much better than most other markets during COVID. And post-COVID, we stayed pretty strong. But I also think we might have had maybe an inflated price point because we were kind of the only product available to anybody who wanted to travel during those times. And so we inflated, but then everything else caught up. Like inflation caught up with everything, and then all of a sudden we were behind. It's kind of weird how that worked out. There's a lot of demand for Traverse City and Northern Michigan right now, so that bumped it up. But then, prices on everything went up, and now when you look at 5 years later, it all has kind of evened out. The spot where we have really come back, and now at this point the nation kind of has too, is group business, and we do depend a lot on group business, especially in spring and fall. That's when we get a lot of those conferences and meetings at Grand Traverse Resort, Park Place, Delamar, Indigo. We've got 7 full-service properties. We've got some other great venues throughout town and the region. So we have seen that come back 100%. So we are back on track with that. So from a year-round standpoint, I think we are past the whole COVID recovery time. We are now just living in new time. And Traverse City tends to win, Jack. We just win, and not because we get, we're in a really special spot, and we've got some really great assets. Yeah. And everybody wants to be here for this. It's a unique experience coming to Traverse City.
So, and there's a lot of things, and I was going to ask you this a little bit further down the interview here, and by the way, Trevor Tkach, TC Tourism is our guest here today. Again, I've been here 40 years. I'm not a native, but I consider myself a local, right? Mm-hmm. And can we be too successful? I think I'm not hitting you with a question you've never heard.
Right.
You say that we have something special. Will there be, we need a bypass. That's my opinion. My opinion, not necessarily yours. We need some things like that to kind of ease the pressure on a little city. So your thoughts to those questions.
No, that's a really good observation. And I think for those of us who've been here for a long time or grew up here, we do see it a little bit differently because we remember a time when maybe it was a little bit slower and you could get across.
Trevor, it was slower.
All right, it was slower. But I also, having had access to survey results from community input exercises from the National Cherry Festival, people have always complained about traffic in the summertime in Traverse City. Like there was never an era where people didn't feel like, it's really busy. And that's because we are here for all 4 seasons. So we know what it feels like in the middle of winter when, you can shoot a cannon down Grandview Parkway some days, right? There's nothing going in the middle of a snowy, cold day a lot of times. But Can you be too successful? I think it's about managing the success. How do we work strategically to not make it feel like, I hate the word over tourism, but that's really what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get to a point where you've flipped the value proposition where people don't feel like they're getting a good experience and they're paying, a premium to be in a special spot? We have to be very sensitive to that. Some of it is traffic congestion. Some of it might be, you just can't get into the spots you want to get into, like a winery or a restaurant. But all in all, what I hear from those who are visiting is they don't see it that way. They're coming from metropolitan areas for the most part. And you want to talk about traffic. I mean, we don't even hold a candle to things that happen in Grand Rapids or Detroit. I mean, those congestion in a big city is just a different way of living. It takes hours to commute to work, and that's what they're getting away from. And so if they have to sit in traffic on Grandview Parkway and stare at the bay, they're not complaining about that. We're complaining because, we have to live this every day.
Sure.
One of the things that I get often from my high school friends who come back to visit, because I went to Traverse City High School back when there was only one public high school. I went to it's now Central. This is almost with everyone. Their parents still live here. My parents tell Trevor that he's doing too good of a job. They always say that, which I appreciate because they think I have a lot of control over this. I probably don't. We're just telling good stories. But a lot of people want to be here, and the people who live here sometimes do feel overwhelmed. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed by all of it, but we need it, and we need to find ways to strategically work together to make the best of what can be a challenging situation in the summer.
Sure. So one of the things, and I'm just asking a question because I'm not sitting at the table where you are talking to people, but one of the things, again, just an observational standpoint, it seems like, and I know you've worked on this over the years, but it's like everybody wants to be in that open space, everything. Yeah. Has there been any discussion, you talk about, because when people say Traverse City, they're not thinking of the 16,000 people that live in the city limits. They're thinking of basically all of Grand Traverse County and parts of Leelanau and Kalkaska. Right. So is there any discussion or talk about getting some of the other townships and things involved? Maybe somebody with a band shell, maybe somebody with this or that. I know you've done that with the what's the Herculean thing?
The Iron Man.
Thank you. The Iron Man. You said, hey, let's move that over to Frankfort, and it seems to have been a great fit. So how does that work when you are working with a region, not just a 16,000 person city?
Yeah, it's it takes a lot of good conversation, and you got to get up high, right? Get to the 30,000 foot level and look at this region and where do we have opportunity. I would agree. The highest demand piece of property in our region for events is going to be the open space park in Traverse City. And I think there's a time when we need to activate that space. It's a sacred space for a lot of reasons, and we got to be thoughtful about how we use it, when we use it as a community. Case in point, the Traverse City Food and Wine just took place in the open space. For those who are familiar with that area, that's kind of broken into 4 quadrants by the city, and we only took up one of the 4 quadrants to put on this event, but they still consider it a high impact event. But it was, we're talking about 1,500 people in that space for one day during the day. And it felt like it fit with the values and the assets that we have here. It just felt like it was a good fit. And that's part of it too. It's not just about, are we doing too much of something or too much in one spot? It's like, where do things fit? You brought up a really good point. Iron Man, when we did it in 2019 in Traverse City, it fit for a lot of people. It didn't fit for everybody. Yeah. And it had its challenges, but it fits in Frankfort too. And so moving it out to Benzie County and having the bike ride on M22 and having the, Frankfort is just such a wonderful host for this.
Beautiful.
That has worked out very well. But, you got to be careful too that you don't set up rules or restrictions to a point where now we don't have anything going on, because part of what makes this area so cool is we do have a variety of opportunities, entertainment, great food and wine, and just the agriculture scene is very special. So I'm a big fan of trying to integrate more of what we're doing here already into the events and the programming, because then that showcases our values and it makes it easier to talk about it. But that said, we also do the International Fireworks Championship, which isn't unique to Traverse City. Fireworks are, thrown off all across the globe, but we chose to do that at the ballpark. Where with the pit, we partnered with the Pit Spitters, and we're out there at Turtle Creek Stadium. That's a good fit.
Now I'm going to that for the first time. I love fireworks.
And I'm so happy you are, because honestly, you will be amazed. You cannot actually see the entire show from your seat. You got to constantly be turning your head because you're surrounded by pyrotechnics and music that's all synchronized.
Real life IMAX.
Yeah, it really is. But we could have done that anywhere. Like, we could have been like, hey, let's try to make this work in the open space park. Well, maybe it's not a good fit at the open space park. So I think some of that strategic thinking is happening. I like your thinking on this though too. Can we start to develop other space, like a band shell somewhere or other venues? We've got wonderful space all across the 5-county region, really. What can we do in other places to spread the wealth?
So I'm going to throw before, for 30 years when I was doing mornings next door, I brought this up sometimes, and it never went anywhere. So now I feel like I have a guy whose ear I might actually be able to bend. So the open space. Now, what I'm about to say is probably just terrible to a lot of people. We need to fill in the water and expand landfill from the end of the open space over towards Tom's West Bay to create a bigger park.
Oh. Yeah.
So that there are actually trees and a bench where somebody could sit and barbecue, or when there is something going on, they can sit there. The other towns, in my opinion, in northern Michigan, kick Traverse City's butt when it comes to usable open space waterfront. So you can take credit for that idea when it happens, okay?
I love it. I'm making mental notes right now.
But think about it. The open space is a chunk of grass. What if we actually made it a real park? But anyway, so let's get back to tourism. I won't let you comment so you don't get in trouble.
Fair. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's talk about tourism statewide, because I know you're involved in that.
Sure.
I remember when I was in the House, and again, don't want to get overly political here, but a certain governor line itemed all of money for Pure Michigan right out of things, and I think eventually it did come back. But where does it stand now? Because she came up with a whole nother, like, come to work in Michigan, not a true tourism thing. That was huge for tourism in Michigan, not just Traverse City, but the whole state.
Yeah, so Pure Michigan is it's a political football, unfortunately.
Yes, it is.
It shouldn't be, because it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you align with. The reality is this is a big part of our economy. It's a lot of our jobs depend on it. In our region, about 1 in 6 employees are working in hospitality and tourism. So we know that this is important to small business and important to keep people fully employed. So it is frustrating that we can't find some way to lock in a Pure Michigan funding mechanism and not. I'll be honest. I wish it wasn't linked to the general fund. I wish there was some other way that we had dedicated funding that went to that, because it isn't just important to a Traverse City or northern Michigan. This truly is driving the tourism economy for the entire state, and it is an image builder. You got to remember, a lot of people think Pure Michigan's only benefiting northern Michigan. The most visited city in our area in our state is Detroit. They see more visitors than anyone, and they're a part of the Pure Michigan story too. So you brought up the fact that there's other campaigns that the state does to try to, recruit talent and encourage people to work here. That's important. I think sometimes it's forgotten that a softer, gentler way of doing that is just doing a good job with Pure Michigan.
I agree.
We've done studies with Longwoods International that has shown there's a study called the Halo Effect, and Pure Michigan just did one of these. They've done it twice. So they just delivered a report, I think it was either this year or last, where it shows that if you see the Pure Michigan campaign and then visit our state, it has a profound influence over whether or not you think you could live in this state, whether or not you'd send your kid to school in this state. Would you open a business here? Would you, start a career here? It's all linked, but it's a soft approach. Like, you don't do anything without a visit, right? Like, you wouldn't necessarily, it'd be very peculiar to say, oh, I'm going to go to this college without visiting the college first. Sure. Or, oh, I'm going to take a job in this new town without seeing it and, kicking the tires.
You'd at least take a visit.
Right. So I think that sometimes that's lost in translation. I think a lot of people look at Pure Michigan as only being a tourism driver. It is actually, it's an economic driver for all sectors in our state.
Yeah, very much so. And, I always said too, those just focusing on Pure Michigan for a moment here, those commercials attracted people to Michigan, but it gave the people of Michigan pride in the state we live in. Because, speaking for myself, I'd hear or see one and I'd go, yeah, that's my state. That's my town. That's the city I grew up in, Detroit. Whatever the case may be, it gave me pride in the state I have. And, that kind of propaganda, and that's what it is not always a bad thing.
No, I agree with you 100%. It's esprit de corps. So as those of us who have chosen to stay in the state, it's a reminder of why we're here. It's like, oh, yeah, man, this is a really cool state. I might live in a metropolitan area, but I can't escape north. Or if I live up north, I can still have these urban experiences downstate. It also is a reminder to everybody who left the state what they left behind. And I hear that a lot of folks who moved away and they see those ads and they're like, oh, man, I really miss that. And that draws them back in. That ad is compelling.
So we got a little more time here, but just let's get back to the regional thing. You're TC Tourism, but I know that you work with everybody. How is Northwest Michigan as a whole? Because back when I was repping, I could see that Manistee is a town that's about ready to pop. It's got some great things going there, and they're heading in the right direction. But you go farther up north, Petoskey, Charlevoix, they've been, they're classic, great spots. So, what do you think about the region, and is there somebody out there who you would say is like, hey, watch them because they're coming?
Well, I think it is interesting to it's kind of our comp set, our competitors, but not really, because Traverse City is kind of a unique animal. We've got more hotel rooms, we've got more amenities
Sure.
and things than a Manistee or even a Petoskey. But we have a lot of similarities too. A lot of us are on Lake Michigan, where we're providing some recreational benefits like the golf and the skiing and things like that. So there's a lot of similarities. I have seen from what I can tell, everyone's probably doing about as well as Traverse City this year in the Northwest Michigan area. Who do I think is going to pop? Well, it's interesting because I think some of the smallest of towns are the greatest benefactors of this summer. I think that people are escaping to towns like Glen Arbor and Leland and Frankfort, just to spread out a little bit and get those really small town sort of feel. Experiences, but I don't see them necessarily growing a ton. Like I think, a Leland and a Grand Glen Lake and other spots are probably going to be what they are and just keep enhancing and refining that product. Who might like pop? I honestly,
it's just like ESPN.
So this is weird. This is weird, but I think I'm starting to see a lot of growth inward. Gaylord's actually done a lot.
Yeah.
They've grown a ton. You've seen a lot of hotels pop up in that area. So I think they were an underperforming asset for our state. And the more that investors have come in and they're local, this is the other cool part. A lot of those investors are local investors. We always talk about money coming from out of market, but I'm here to tell you that that's not necessarily the case. There's a lot of people who live in Michigan and in northern Michigan who are investing in making our towns better. Traverse City, I think we are very lucky to have a very strong support group. And I see people who started as investors from outside of the state and now they've chosen to be here because they started to make those investments and they want to make this home now. And so that's cool. So no one's going to outdo the Traverse City area. But I think there's potential for just about every town in northern Michigan if they want that.
So and this will be my last question. We'll let you go. But I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up because you're dealing with the realities of the world, workforce housing.
Yeah.
That's got to be an issue for you because you've got all these businesses who are trying to get employees, and if they can't stay open because they can't get a night shift, you're hurting as TC Tourism. So thoughts, where are we headed? How's that going to work out?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I will say I'm pleased that a lot of the hoteliers, restaurateurs in this region who have the wherewithal to do it have tried to find solutions for housing independently. And that's not necessarily the case in all sectors. I think that because we're so seasonal with hospitality and tourism, a lot of times they have to build just temporary types of housing opportunities. So it's not necessarily for season. But I'm with you 100%. It's a wicked issue, and it's not unique to Traverse City. No. It's national. It's an international issue. It's expensive. And if you're a builder, if the option is to build something that you can sell for $1 million or build something that you're going to rent for $1,000, you're probably going to chase the dollars. I mean, I wouldn't you? I mean, if you got your return on your investment as a builder is in the high end luxury piece, and people want that here too. You got to find ways to incentivize the actual builders and the developers to do these projects. So I like a lot. I think we're seeing more public-private sort of partnerships. We're trying to develop mechanisms that make it easier to create those. But I also don't think it all has to be in one spot. Like, I live in Traverse City. I live in the city, and it took me a long time to make enough money to make that happen. It's not just something that's guaranteed to you because you were born here.
Sure.
We had to work our way into that space, but there's a lot of really great bedroom communities in this region. They're doing really well. They're doing good things. They're building the housing. They're building, affordable apartments. So I'm optimistic that we are solving it. It's never going to move fast enough, right?
No.
But I do see a will there, and I think we've been talking about it enough, and this is a really good community that likes to solve those types of problems. So I'm hopeful for the future.
All right, we got to go, but I'll leave you with the last word. Any positive thoughts on tourism in the state or Northwest Michigan?
Yeah, I'm just really impressed with how well we've all been working together, not only in the Traverse City region, but in northern Michigan. Visitors don't see borders. We talk about Traverse City as locals. We think, oh, he's, Trevor, he's all about Traverse City. But when you talk about, you said you grew up in Detroit.
I did.
Jack, did you grow up in Detroit?
Yes, I did.
That's a unique thing because a lot of people are in the suburbs, but they say they're from Detroit, right?
No,
so it's the same principle here, right? It's, Traverse City kind of represents a state of mind. You get close to the East and West Grand Traverse Bay. You're coming here to just have that, wonderful experience of just being in up north Michigan. So I think the future is looking very bright, not only for the Traverse City area, but northern Michigan, all of Michigan when it comes to tourism. I think there's a lot of good people doing the right stuff right now. So I'm proud to be a part of it.
All right. Trevor, thank you very much. I know you're probably getting ready for a little breather here after Labor Day, but thank you for coming on Traverse City Tourism. Trevor Tkach, President and CEO. Thanks. Continued success.
Thanks, Jack.
We'll be back after this on the Weekend Journal News Talk 580.